So if you have a solid door and then it has like a wooden door jamb or the door frame, this is a bar attached to that door frame. So the pull-up bar would probably attach somewhere here. It's gonna be made out of steel and some kind of bracket attached to the sides. My idea is very simple. Cut a piece of angle bar like this, and then another angle bar will be attached here. So somehow we're gonna look something like this. So then I'll just drill 4 holes here. So the round bar will go somewhere here. This one must be 35 mm, 35 mm. I will now go ahead and try to fabricate this. Before we start, let's talk about safety. So we need welding gloves. You need welding mask as well. I'm wearing denim pants, safety shoes. You can also notice that I'm wearing a safety glasses. Of course, fire extinguisher. So here, I'm trying to remove the rust of the metal. I'm using scrap metal that's been sitting for like a year. So before I do any kind of welding, I have to clean and remove all of those rust first. The metal parts here are already cut to size. I just need to add a few more cuts. So I'm using here a cutting disc, hand grinder. So I've been experienced enough to be able to cut real straight. So it takes quite some skills and practice to be able to do this. But once you've able to practice long enough, you should be able to cut, straight and as very close to your scriber lines as possible. So these are the parts that has been cut. Now is the welding. So I'm using a large angle bar attached to a clamp. And then if you notice, I'm using 2 pieces of vice grip pliers to hold my pieces together. Then I can weld it without difficulty. So upon checking, our weld is, I guess, okay. So there you go. And then I have to weld a few more areas here. So you notice there that my welding rod got stuck. So this is very common, especially if you're in a rush. Now you can also notice that I'm welding it intermittently. This is because my welding rod does not match the thickness of my material. If I weld it continuously, I'd end up with undercuts and I could burn through the metal. Now because this piece will be attached or bolted to a wooden frame, I would like to flush out the back portion of it. That's why here I'm grinding off some of the weld beads. And then just for safe and aesthetic purpose, I'm marking the edges so that I could cut it in a fillet. So this just gives us a safe design so that there will be no sharp edges. This is when I'm laying out for the bolt holes. So if I'm using a scriber and a caliper here, then of course before you have to drill it, you have to put some center punch. Yeah, I'm just using a hand drill. I don't have a drill press as of now. If I'm not mistaken, the drill bit I'm using is I think 3 millimeters.
Final finishing, I'm using a flap disc. So this just makes your bracket smoother. Removing sharp edges, removing burrs, and all of those things. So you end up with a really smooth finish. So before painting, I always apply iron phosphate solution to the metal pieces. This gives it like a layer of protection against rust, and it also gives you that matte finish, making your paint or primer stick to the metal more. You have to leave it for like a day. So here I'm prepping, cutting the actual bar. So I'm using a round tube and then just cutting it by hacksaw. Have to file the edges to remove some of the burrs. And then because it already have a layer of paint, I had to sand it roughly so that the primer will stick. So this is the gray primer we're using. Very easy to apply. And then I'm using white so that it matches the door frame. So these are the finished products. So I'm using a piece of old slippers, rubber slippers, as a some kind of insert so that the metal pieces will not rub against each other. So marking it the correct height, and then this is how I will be attaching the bracket. So just putting in some hole marks. You can actually drill it right away with wood screw, but I prefer to drill it first. It makes it a lot easier. And then of course you have to use a level to make sure that your bar will be straight. And the same process here. Then if you notice, I'm using those rubber inserts. And that's it. It seems that it is strong enough. Then we can do some exercise already. So that ends our video. I hope you learned something and see you soon.